Hello and welcome everyone to the second part of my Minimator real-time masking tutorial. Today's topic will be how you can make 100% perspectively correct portals in just Minimator. Important is that I assume that you watched all the other parts of the tutorial series because I'm not gonna explain everything again and again, so just in case that you don't understand some of the things I'm explaining here, just make sure that you watch the other videos. So before I actually show you how you can build a portal, I will explain how the method works. So basically, let's just assume we have a camera here, and if we actually want to make a portal, what we need is the information behind this rectangle black square, but we need this information to be from what is supposed to be behind this portal. And the way we do that is simply by making just the same camera movement again, so that we now can film through this portal and get the information we need, so that we can later stitch this information together, so that we then have a full animation with a actually working portal. So now I will explain how you can make such a portal. Well, the first thing is, for this portal system you should have a folder that is called portal, in which everything that affects this portal system will be parented to. So I have a build, which is just a folder with these obsidian blocks here, and this portal is parented to a folder called overview. You can also just parent this portal folder to your schematic or your scenery, doesn't matter. So the first thing that we are going to add are the black surfaces. So we are just going to spawn in a new surface, parent it to this portal folder here, and this surface should not show back faces and also be completely black and should have a brightness of 100%. This surface also should not cast SSAO. Mostly it makes sense if they actually cast shadows. Then you just have to align the surface so that it fits into the back part of the portal frame here. When you've done that, you should duplicate the surface, move it to the front part of the portal frame and turn it by 180 degrees so that we only can see the surface when we are looking from the other side of the portal. This behavior will be important later, and you will see why. Then we actually can also spawn in our cube, which will be our skybox. I actually recommend using an individual cube for every part of the scene that you will have, because let's say you have a portal that goes into the nether and you probably don't want to use the blue sky from Minimator to appear in the nether, so you will need to use individual skyboxes for every single part of the scenery. And of course we want to make this cube inverted and scale it by something like 10, and also give it some color, maybe something bluish, or you could also just copy Minimator's sky color, doesn't matter here. When you're done with that, you should probably organize your scene so that everything makes sense. You can name all the stuff in here, and then you can already start making your camera motion. Important here is that this camera should be ported to the portal. This is a very important thing, otherwise the effect is not going to work. And then you can just make the movement however you want. So when you're done with your camera motion, you probably should rename this camera to something like Overworld Cam, because we will need this camera later. Then you can duplicate your portal and parent it to any other scenery, or just place it somewhere else wherever you want the other part of the portal to be. In my case, I'm just going to duplicate this whole thing and drag it a little bit to the side, and probably change the cube's color to something reddish so that we can see the difference, and also rename the folder to Nether or something, and also rename the camera to never cam, so that everything is named properly. And since we duplicated this, we should now have two cameras that move exactly in sync, and this is exactly what we need. We will have to do this process one more time, so just duplicate your portal again, but this time you actually want to place your portal in such a white cube, and you'll see why, because this is our mask, so we probably also should call this mask, and the camera should be called something like mask camera. And then you should go to this cube and make it completely bright and white, and this one should not cast any shadow or fog or anything else. And then you should go to your portal, to the frame itself, not to the surface, to the frame itself, and also make it completely white. And this also should not cast any shadows or anything else, so just disable all that. What you can see now is that we have three little scenes. Once our overworld, then we have our nether, and then we have our actual mask. And now we can start compositing these things together so that the portal actually works. For that we will spawn in a new camera. I usually like to call this something like mix color final, because this is going to be our final camera. And the next thing that we want to do is spawn in a surface and parent this surface to the camera. Then this surface should has its rotation point in the center, and the surface should be moved 8 on the y-axis so that it's just in front of the camera. This surface should have the nether cam as its texture, and we probably want to name it something like base for base color. But as you can see, the aspect ratio doesn't fit, and also this is inverted, so we also want to disable show back faces and rotate it by 180 degrees. And now it's too dark, that's because we should make it 100% bright, and this also should not cast shadow or SSAO, or should be affected by fog. Then to fix this aspect ratio thingy, we want to scale it on the x-axis by 1.77777. Because that's the aspect ratio of 16 by 9. Then we want to make our camera have a view of field of 90 degrees, because what we get now is that this mix color final exactly films this 16 by 9 surface, and that's exactly what we need. So basically we didn't achieve anything with this yet, because we are basically just seeing what our nether camera is seeing, but the magic happens now. What we want to do is we want to duplicate our base surface and not move it. That's important. You should not move it. I don't know if this is a bug or an actual feature of Minimator, but as long as we just duplicate the surface and does not move it, it does not start z-fighting, although we change the texture or color. Just to make sure that that works properly, we also should increase the render depth of our new surface by 1 and rename it to something like mask, because we want to apply our mask here. As you can see, this currently only shows white because our mask camera only sees white, so actually as soon as we start playing the animation, we see where our portal is. But our mask actually doesn't work yet. That's because we have to tell our mask to subtract. Well, what you see now is that everything turned black. That's because this portal surface here currently is black, and we actually don't need to see this portal surface here. That's just in case that your main camera is in the nether and you want to see the overworld through this portal, then you will need this black surface, but in our case we don't need it, so we can disable it. And what you'll see now is that we get this perfectly masked nether cam portal surface here. So, but how does that work? Important is that for Minimator, or for basically all programs, white is represented as a 1 and black is represented as a 0. So when we tell our mask to subtract, what happens is that everything that is white will turn to black, because white is the brightest possible color, and with that also the biggest possible number, so everything else has to become black. While when you subtract black, the color won't change, because you basically subtract 0, so you will get the original result again. And that's why this masking method works so well. But we are still not done yet, because as you can see, everything around our portal is missing now. Well, that also is very easy. Just duplicate this mask, set its render depth to 1 higher, set the blend mode to add, name it something like overlay or something, and then as a texture apply the overworld cam. So you also should make sure that this is the only keyframe, because we will have to animate that later. And as you can see, now the portal looks just the way it should, except when you go through this portal, but we will fix that, so don't worry about that. So how does this work now? Well, here we basically do the opposite thing. Since we are adding this color information we get here, we add the color information onto 0, meaning onto black, which means that we again get the original result, while the black surface here has a color black, which equals to a 0, so we are basically adding nothing, so we again get the original result wherever this portal surface is. So that's why we get this working portal here. But as you can see, it still glitches when we are going through this portal, but that's relatively easy to fix. First of all, we should disable this black surface here, because we actually don't need it in our current situation. We would only need that if our camera actually started the animation here, then we would need this black surface, but in our current situation we don't need it, so we're going to disable that. And then, as you can see, the only thing that we gotta do now is switch the textures just when the camera is inside that portal. So somewhere around here, we go to the base and tell it to use the overworld cam, and then we go to the overlay and tell it to use the nether cam. And now we should get this seamless transition between both worlds, and that's exactly what we want. If you should get any glitching around the edges of this portal, or for some reason the lighting does not render, then you should try to restart Minimator. This should fix this problem in 95% of the cases. If it doesn't, then this probably is because your computer doesn't have enough computational power to process all these images together, and in that case I don't think that I can help you. Before you actually render your animation, there are a few things you want to make sure. First of all cameras should use the project settings as the camera size, because usually you want to use a higher resolution than just HD for your animations, and so that everything scales properly, you want to have them all use the project settings. The second thing that you should make sure is that all cameras really are doing the same. If you want to use any camera effects, you can do that, that's not a problem. But again, all three cameras has to do exactly the same. So for example, let's say you want to change the field of view during the animation, you have to do that with all three cameras. And as you can see, this should work just fine. Also, you shouldn't just apply any camera effect to all the cameras. So if you have any Z-buffer based camera effects like depth of field, or you want to use camera shake or rotate around a point, basically all camera effects that affect the movement of the camera, they also have to be applied to all these three cameras, and all effects have to be exactly the same. If you want to use any of the other camera effects, you should do that on the last camera, since this only changes the color of the final result, so that Minimator doesn't have to calculate these effects for every single camera. So you probably want to do that on the last one. Now I have two more things to discuss with you. First of all, how you can add, for example, a Steve who will be in the portal or go through the portal. That's relatively simple. You have to parent this Steve to the portal, place him wherever you want, and what you will see is that this actually already works somewhat, but not the way you expect it to work. Since we're adding the color on top of black, if we actually add it on something that is not black, in our case Steve's head here, you'll see that the color does not apply as we would expect it to do. So what we have to do then is just duplicate our Steve and also apply him on our mask. And in that case he of course also should be 100% white and bright, so that now he is a part of the mask setup itself. And now this should work as we expect it to work. Yes. So now if you actually want to be able to see Steve from the other side, you again have to paste him to the Nether portal part, and then he will be visible in the Nether as well. So the last thing I want to show you today is how you can actually make a portal surface, such as the Nether portals. So just spawn one of the blocks in, and you probably want this block to be the size of your portal, so go 3 on the Z and 2 on the Y, and then of course parent this to your portal. And the cool thing about this is that here we actually don't have to mask the portal away, since this is already a semi-transparent surface, and since we are adding this on black, this should work just as we expect it to work, in a semi-transparent way. And actually if we look at that, you see that it works just fine. If you want this effect to not appear that strong, then you can just go into your Nether portal and either reduce its alpha or just mix it with black, because as darker the surface is, as more transparent it will get. So that's basically the portal mechanic. But there is one more thing that you should make sure in the case that you're using any schematics or stuff, and that is that wherever this camera is, wherever the camera is that films our content behind our portal, this camera has to have a free view through this portal rectangle. In the case that there are any blocks, they will be visible, and then the illusion of this perfect portal will break a little. So just keep that in mind, that you have to keep your scenery free of any blocks in front of this portal surface. So that's basically it for today's tutorial. I hope you could learn something, and we will see next time.